Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn with Wisconsin Farm Bureau. There you are, Mike.
There I am.
We're excited to welcome Mike George from the SCORE Mentor Program to talk about the resources that are available. Just a couple of comments before we do get started. I have tried to mute all of you, so if you have a question or Mike asks if you have any questions, just remember to unmute yourself. There's also a chat feature, so if you look either towards the bottom or the top of your screen, there'll be a little pull-up menu. There's a chat feature. Just make sure that you can either send questions to me, I'm Wendy, or you can send them to everyone, and I will help facilitate some of those questions as we go along here. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mike. He's hopefully going to tell you a little bit about himself, and we'll learn about the SCORE Mentor Program. Mike, take it away.
Well, thanks very much, Wendy. This is a pleasure. I think that this might be a outgrowth or follow-up from a presentation I did on December 1st in Wisconsin Dells at a state conference, and I want to say I was impressed with the conference. First of all, several farm and ag organizations came together, and there was high energy, and I didn't think I would probably have very many at my session because I was opposite how to play euchre. But fortunately, some people decided to come to my session also, so appreciate that. Well, I must tell you, my own background is not in ag. I have, throughout my career of 50 or so years, worked in business and for nonprofit organizations. I've worked in real estate, I've worked in development, and have been executive director of several nonprofits. But I should admit that when I was in college, I started dating a woman who was going to be my future wife. And when I met her parents, they were dairy farmers. And so her dad decided that he would test me as a future son-in-law. So I became a hired hand. And you can imagine that I did everything he asked me to do because, of course, I wanted to marry his daughter. So I'm glad that that worked out. But that's the extent of my direct involvement with agriculture. So I'm going to click through a PowerPoint, and we'll leave time at the end for questions. But if something comes up along the way, feel free just to click in and let me know, and I'll answer your question. So a bit about SCORE. SCORE is, now let me click there we go. So the mission of SCORE, as you can see here, is to foster vibrant small businesses and organizations through mentoring and education. And one of the wonderful things about SCORE is that almost all of our services are free. The only time we charge a small fee is when we provide a workshop. And the most we've ever charged for a workshop is $20, and those are for 1.5 hours or 2 hours. So all of our mentoring, all of our online materials, and other materials that we provide are free. And that's one of the things that drew me to SCORE as a volunteer. So the vision, we hope that someday every person has the support necessary to thrive as a small business owner or an organizational leader. We keep putting the word organization in there because we do also provide service to nonprofits. And that's a relatively new direction for SCORE, which always was primarily small businesses. But the number of nonprofits, particularly in Wisconsin, has grown so tremendously that there is a need to provide nonprofits with services. And you may think that you're not involved with a nonprofit, but I bet in one way or another you are. You're probably either a member of a nonprofit organization, or you volunteer for a nonprofit organization, or you contribute to a nonprofit organization, or you might even be on the board of directors of a nonprofit. So our lives are greatly influenced by nonprofit organizations, and what would we do without volunteers through nonprofit organizations? Our life would be much less rich than it is without volunteers. So keep that in mind about your own involvement, because I bet you might be surprised. So just a little bit about the organization of SCORE in Wisconsin. This map shows you various regional chapters of SCORE. And each of the chapters has a chairperson and members. The number of members vary all the way from 100 to maybe 12, depending on where it is in the state. But all of the members are volunteers. And we also have a chairperson for the whole district, which includes some of Northern Illinois as well as all of Wisconsin. And on one of the slides, you'll see his name, David Maskey, and his contact information. I'm giving you just a couple of examples here of two regional chapters. The regional chapter I'm a part of is in Madison, but we also provide services in those listed counties. And then, for instance, another example is Green Bay, which provides services in an area. So these chapters each cover more than just the city where they happen to be located. And of course, besides the direct services from these chapters, if you go to the websites of chapter, and for instance, just put in madison.score.org or greenbay.score.org or wausau.score.org, they're pretty consistent in terms of their website address. But what you will find is a drop-down menu that says find a mentor, or take a workshop, or search for resources. And they're pretty user-friendly. And when you put in find a mentor, a search screen will come up, and you can just tell us what it is you're looking for. You may have a topic that you're looking for, a particular type of need, or you may be looking for a person that you hope is a SCORE volunteer or that you've met before, or you may just be looking for a geographic area where you happen to live and work, and you want to see who is available as a mentor through SCORE in that area. And the search will bring people up. All of us, as we volunteer for SCORE, put a profile of ourselves into the website that tells who we are, what we do, and some of our background and the kinds of things that we feel we can help you with. So as you see, what SCORE does, you don't have to go it alone. The mentoring is, again, free, and it's one-on-one, and it can be in person at a SCORE office or at a location that's more convenient to you. Or it can be by email or telephone. I've done mentoring where it's a combination, where we exchange emails for a while, we have a telephone call, and then we decide to meet in person. And I'll always invite people to come to the SCORE office, but if that's not convenient, then I'll go somewhere closer to wherever they're located. The workshops that are provided are on a variety of topics, and we depend on people like you to suggest what topics you'd like to have a workshop provided and where you'd like to see that provided. And then the SCORE.org is the national website, because SCORE as a national organization has 350 chapters around the country and over 10,000 mentors who all are volunteers. And the SCORE website, score.org, I'm just amazed at the resources that are there. So sometime if you just have a bit of time that you can explore that website, you again find a way to search for mentors on a national basis, because by way of email or phone or Skype or even the program we're using today, Zoom, you can talk with someone anywhere in the country. But the webinars that SCORE provides on a weekly basis are all archived so that you can go to them anytime you want. And there's a directory on every topic. And again, it's all free. Excuse me. So I'm a SCORE mentor. I've been involved with the Madison chapter now for 6 years. And prior to that, I'd never heard of SCORE, but I happened to be at a meeting one day, and when we were going around the table introducing ourselves, someone said, and I volunteer for SCORE. So after the meeting, I said, tell me about SCORE. And I went with him to a meeting, and here I am now as chair of the Madison chapter of SCORE. But our SCORE mentors, in Madison, we have about 50 men and women. Some are retired, some are still working. It's a diverse group, and we have also some who are business owners or former business owners or managers. But what I've discovered is they're all leaders, and they have great knowledge that can be put to whatever issues people bring to us. So I've enjoyed the time I've met with SCORE. I've met some fantastic people. I usually do mentoring myself about a half day or 1 day a week, because I have other things that I volunteer for as well as SCORE. And so, but I do devote about a day a week either mentoring or working at home on a computer to serve SCORE. And I've met some wonderful people. I'll give a couple examples of people. These aren't necessarily agriculture examples, but they're examples of people who are driven to be their own boss. And I think that that may be something that is also common among people in agriculture. So for instance, one day I had an appointment with a young woman. When she came in, she had said she had just graduated from UW-Stevens Point, and she had a degree in business and accounting, but she didn't want to be in business and she didn't want to be an accountant. I said, well, why did you get that degree? She said, well, my dad told me if I didn't go into accounting that he wouldn't pay for my college education. So I went into accounting. But she said, what I really want to do is work with animals. And so I'm going to start a home pet care service. And, you know, she did. We developed a business plan. She didn't need financing because she wasn't going to have an office and she wasn't going to have employees. It was going to pretty much be her providing pet services and home pet care, but whether it be walking a dog, dog sitting, cat sitting, whatever. And off she went. And a year later, she called me and said, I'd like to meet with you again. And I said, fine. So I'm thinking in my mind, probably this hasn't gone so well and she needs to figure out something else. And when she came in, I said, well, tell me how you're doing. She said, well, I have so much business that I can't keep up. And so I need to hire some employees. So I need help with how to set up a payroll and hire staff and get insurance. And so I thought I'd come and see you. So that was, to me, a wonderful success story. But what drove her from the beginning was the desire to be her own boss. And by golly, she's doing it. So why do people volunteer for SCORE? I said we have about 50 volunteers in the Madison area. Some people do it because it's a way to give back and be of service to other people. If you've had success in your own life, it's always wonderful to share their knowledge and your experience with others. And also we meet, as I said, we meet and we build relationships with wonderful people who come as clients, but also with the other volunteers. I went to a conference 2 years ago in the summer that was actually a national conference for SCORE, because I needed to be trained and receive orientation on how to be a chair of a chapter. And one of the amazing things that suddenly occurred to me is that I was at a conference with about 500 people, all of whom were volunteers. No one other than the chair of the conference was being paid. And it's a special kind of feeling to be at a conference like that. And there was no complaining, high energy, and the sessions that were provided were so very helpful. Another reason people volunteer is because they have this mission that they've grown up with to strengthen business and organizations. Plus, you learn things that if you're still working, you can apply in your own work. So we always are looking for additional volunteers. So, and if you are living and breathing, then you can be a volunteer. You may not want to be a mentor, but you may want to be a workshop leader or help in another way. And as I said, you can do this very part-time, whatever amount of time you can devote, even though you're still working and very busy. So thinking of yourself and people that you know and work with, these are some kinds of things that SCORE helps with. Developing a business plan. This is probably our number one request for assistance, is to help with a business plan, either because someone is applying for some financing, or they just want to have a good organizational plan to either go into business or to expand their current operations. And a business plan is something that sometimes has not been a part of people's experience. So that's our number one request, as I said. Also, sometimes there's change and people are growing or changing their business and their operations, whether it be in agriculture or something else, and that change can use some help. Also, our other common request is to help with marketing. So if you're producing something that doesn't automatically have a market and you need some help with marketing your services or your product, that's a common thing. Securing financing, we work closely with the Small Business Administration and some of the USDA financing that's available, and some specialized financing through an organization that specializes in financing and support for women going into business called WIBIC, W-I-B-I-C. Also, we do mentoring for improving operations or management, and I will have to say with with rural and agriculture oriented clients that we have, the number one request for help we've been getting lately is for sale or transition or succession planning. As you know, it's a big issue with particularly family farms. So just to step back a minute and give you a chance to think about yourself and what you're doing and the kinds of things that are a part of your life, particularly related to your work. And it's always valuable to step back and ask some big questions like, what are your most important personal or business goals for the next 5 years? And maybe you have those in the front of your mind, but if you haven't thought about it, it's a good thing to not only think about, but write them down. I've always found I can think about things a lot, but when I go to write them down, it helps me to clarify what I really want to say and what I really want to do. And once you write down a couple goals, just think about what are some things that are going to make it difficult to achieve those goals? What barriers might you need to overcome or achieve to achieve your goals? But at the same time, what are some current conditions or opportunities that would help you to achieve your goals? So once again, it's great to write these down. Now, interestingly, I have an adult daughter who's currently a teacher and lives in rural Wisconsin near Mount Horeb. And I had coffee with her after school the other day, and she said, "I have a surprise for you." So what is that? And she showed me her industrial hemp certificate. So she has decided, along with her sister, that they're going to grow hemp. And I did a little research on the current conditions for hemp growing and realized there have been some changes in the law, and that I'm told by the government office that the request for industrial hemp licenses is 4 times greater this year than it was last year. So if you're looking for a little sideline to your current work, think about it. You don't need a lot of land, and this might be the right time to get into the industrial hemp business. So what do I know about growing hemp? Nothing. But if my daughter decided that that's something she's going to do, I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot in the next few years. So.
Yep. Hey, Mike, Farm Bureau has been really active in hemp legislation, so we're very familiar with what is happening with the resurgence of industrial hemp. So.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. See, I'm not in that loop. So, but as I said, I have the feeling that I'm going to be. So, and that's why this question about what current conditions or opportunities might exist that can help you achieve goals, because things change constantly, as you know, and you always have to be on the lookout for opportunities and changes in not only law, but in taste and consumer priorities and techniques, and how that will give you an opportunity to do some things that perhaps you weren't able to do before. Now, I mentioned before that business plan planning and writing and outline is one of the most common requests that we get from people who connect with us as a client. So I just included here a brief outline of a business plan, because often people, when you say business plan, if you've never developed one, it sounds very ominous, but it's not. And a business plan does not have to be a long and tedious project. A good business plan usually is somewhere between 5 and 12 pages long of typical word processed paper. But many times when people are looking at a business plan that someone has presented to them, they'll just select a particular part that they're most interested in. So for instance, if you are presenting a business plan that is aimed at requesting some financing for something, most often people will look at the description of your business and they'll look at the financial data. Then if that looks reasonable and feasible, then they'll look at other things. But this is a typical outline. When someone says business plan, these are the kinds of things that are normally a part of a business plan. The executive summary might be 1 or 2 pages, could be 3 or 4 paragraphs. It does not have to be long, but it helps to have an outline. And it's also helpful, the bottom or the final bullet point there is to include your experience, training, or expertise, or if you're in a partnership or an LLC or a whatever the business structure is you have, and you have other people working with you or for you, you want to include something about their experience, training, and expertise. So anyone looking at your business will know that you have not only yourself, but perhaps some other people who can have what it takes to make this successful. Now I'm going to send this PowerPoint to Wendy, and so that if there are any of you who wish to receive it, I'm sure that can be made possible. Is that right, Wendy? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Great. So besides SCORE, there's also partnerships that we have with various other organizations. And one that's just about a year or so old is with the USDA. And so we often include information about USDA support and USDA opportunities, some of which overlap with SCORE. For instance, USDA also provides mentoring and a lot of great information. So I have included here on this slide the website, particularly for new farmers, it says. But when I went to that website, I would say it has information for anyone in agriculture, whether you're a new farmer or an experienced farmer. There's a lot of great information and links to other places, including financing. But they also offer mentorships, and you can sign up for a mentor through USDA, or you can find a mentor, as I mentioned before, through SCORE. So the USDA partnership has proven to be very relevant to what SCORE has been doing for a long time and what USDA has been doing for a long time. Our SCORE chapter in Madison also partners with United Way, and the United Way of Dane County is a very successful organization at raising funds and supporting particularly nonprofit organizations. And we have several business sponsors who help to support our operational expense by making donations. So, but SCORE, through our code of ethics, we don't recommend particular vendors or businesses, but we're happy that they believe in what we do and will support us. One of the things I want to say about the business plan again is often when I mention that people will look at the finance part of it, clients that I've had, usually if they're going into business by themselves, a sole proprietor or an LLC, whatever structure they choose, I always encourage them to contract out for certain services. And the number one service I recommend that they find someone to do for them is their accounting. And usually I say, because people will always think they can do their bookkeeping and accounting by themselves, but I always ask the question, think about what you really want to do, and is that the best use of your time? Because you can get help from qualified people for accounting and payroll and doing a lot of important work that is required, but would take a lot of time for a person who's doing it sort of as a part of something else. And the cost, I've discovered, is very reasonable for contracted services. So I'm going to give you some contact information. I just want to talk about who these people are, but you can get it off of the PowerPoint at whatever point you get this from Wendy. Dave Maskey, I mentioned before, is a district director. That means he's responsible for supporting all of Wisconsin plus Northern Illinois. He's located in Milwaukee himself. He's a former chairperson of the Milwaukee chapter of SCORE, very knowledgeable, and he has a particular interest in our partnership with USDA and our services in agriculture. So, and as I said, you can contact SCORE mentors via email or telephone. You don't always have to meet with them face to face. So Dave is a great resource. Kim is our representative from USDA, and she's particularly interested in our partnership with between SCORE and USDA, and has presented workshops and is great at finding resources that can be of help to you. So you have her email there also. Mm-hmm. So as I said before, I'll send this PowerPoint to Wendy, or if you'd like to contact me, I'm giving you my email as well. Pretty much all of the SCORE volunteers, their email is their first and last name plus with a period between, and then at scorevolunteer.org. So I've taken about 25 minutes, so I'm happy to answer some questions if there are some. And Wendy, I'll let you monitor this.
Yeah, sure. If you do have any questions, we'll give you a few seconds to put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask your questions. Just going back to Mike's last slide, Kim actually works for the state FSA office. So many of you are probably familiar with FSA, and that's how we got connected with Mike, was through Kim and talking about opportunities, financing for our young farmer members. So just so you're aware, Kim does work for the state FSA office. Any questions from anyone? Don't see any in the chat. All right, well, seeing no questions, I want to thank Mike for his time today and sharing information about the SCORE program. As you can see, they offer a lot of benefits, especially for those people looking for business advice. So I highly encourage you, if you are one of those individuals, to definitely check into that. We will be sharing this recording on our social channels. So we'll be sharing it on the Wisconsin Farm Bureau and the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Young Farmer and Agriculturist Facebook pages sometime in the very near future. If you're interested in other Lunch and Learns, our next Lunch and Learns will take place on Wednesday, April 3rd at noon. We will be having John Schutzke from UW-Madison come. He will be speaking about mental health, and so an issue that a lot of people in agriculture have been dealing with recently, and he's going to talk about ways that you can manage stress. If you have any questions, like Mike said, feel free to send them to him or send them to me. We'd be happy to answer those for you. And with that, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you next month.